I look at these indicators and the different, inputs. I end up getting a $300 target. All these indicators tend to point to $300.
Okay, walk us through some of your indicators and your rationale, because I'm gonna be very technical with this interview here, because we've heard $100 silver, triple-digit silver calls by many notable people in the silver industry. Keith Neumeyer being one of them, a regular guest of ours. He's been calling for triple-digit silver for a long time. People are just tired of waiting for silver to even break above $50, which we haven't had since the 80s.
Right.
Forget $100, forget $300. We haven't even seen 50.
Right.
I can already see the comments in the section. Peter, don't tell us about triple-digit silver. Tell us about how to break through 50 or $30 first.
Right.
So anyway, all that to say is please walk us through your rationale and your models.
So I guess one of the most common and best known and perhaps most understood is the gold-silver ratio. And so it doesn't mean that silver has to go to $300 because of how the ratio might behave. But at least for me, it indicates the potential. So if you look at forecasts for silver prices, and so for gold prices, so I'm not the only one who thinks gold will go to ultimately 5,000 or even perhaps 10,000 in a speculative mania. You've got people like Jim Rickards, Shane McGuire, who ran a gold fund for the Texas teachers retirement system. You've got Scott Minerd of Guggenheim, and you've got the In Gold We Trust report that forecasts relatively easy forecast to close to 5,000 in gold, and perhaps up to about 9,000, depending on how inflation plays out. So, all that to say that if you take even $5,000 in gold, and you look at the gold-silver ratio, when the ratio bottomed in 1980, and it took 15 ounces of silver to buy an ounce of gold. So, based on that ratio, at $5,000 gold, you're looking at $300 silver.
All right, we're going to unpack a lot of assumptions you made there, including the $5,000 gold call. We're going to come back to that. Okay, so $300 silver. Let's talk about how we get there. But first and foremost, suppose we have $300 silver tomorrow. Let's just suppose it happens tomorrow. A lot of silver investors, miners would be very happy, of course, but don't you see problems in our economy? A lot of industrial applications that need silver, they're not going to be able to afford to put as much silver in their batteries, in their solar panels, and we're going to probably see an industry-wide movement of thrifting, which is what we saw in 2011 when gold and other precious metals hit then all-time highs. $300 silver sounds like a problem to me more than anything else. Can you elaborate on that?
You're right. I mean, I believe silver would get to that kind of level in a speculative mania, and that if you get there, start selling, because I wouldn't expect it to stay there, and the stocks would explode. I wouldn't expect the stocks to stay there either at $300 silver. And you're right, it would be detrimental, very detrimental, in fact, for the industrial applications, because silver's become irreplaceable in so many ways in industry. So to have to pay that kind of money for silver, it's true that in many of those applications, it's very, very small amounts of silver.
Nice.
So there's a fair bit of tolerance in terms of the price they'll pay for the silver that goes into those applications, but it still would wreak havoc. There's no question.
Okay. The question is when? When can silver reach $300? I pitched your story to my colleague Michelle McCory. First question she asked me was when. That's the first question in everybody's mind.
Right, of course. Mine as well. So realistically, I think, you're going to have to look out 5 to 10 years. These things always take longer. And I know, like you said at the beginning, people are impatient.
We're tired of being patient.
Absolutely. But then you shouldn't be in this game. It's not for you. It's not the place for you. People complain about $22 silver, but you had plenty of time to buy silver at $15 in 2018 and 2019. It was hovering at 15 for almost a couple of years. We're over 40% above that right now. No complaints from me in that respect.
But you're talking about a more than 10 times increase. Has that happened in silver's history?
Silver was up 3,700% in the 1970s. It started out at $1.30 in 1971 and peaked at $50. So that, versus gold, that did a 1,400% return. So silver more than doubled gold's return.
So there is a precedent of
most definitely
something like this happening. I'm curious as to why we never reached the 1980 highs, Peter. 40 years?
Right. That's a good question as well. It got to 49 in 2011, and that was somewhat of a speculative mania as well, and it sold off pretty quickly. But silver just behaves like that. It goes through long periods of consolidation, trading sideways. It ran to $30 in August of 2020, and then since then it's been in a range between about 21 and 29.
Okay, so Peter, nobody has a crystal ball. You don't know exactly when $300 is going to hit. Let's do some brainstorming together then. So in the 70s, it took how long for a dollar silver to reach then all-time highs?
10 years.
10 years. Can we reasonably assume a 10x increase over the next 10 to 15 years?
I would say yes, absolutely. Even if it doesn't stay there, I think that the odds of some kind of a bubble is very likely.
It's very difficult to make predictions 10 years out. Who knows what the world's going to look like in 10, 15 years. I do have a question for you. Why do you expect the silver to gold ratio to hold 10 to 15 years out? I mean, let's assume that it does. You're assuming there's no external forces that would push the ratio apart, would cause the two metals to diverge, right? What are these assumptions you're making?
So the ratio is at 82 right now. If you look over the last, say, 20, 30 years, it's averaged about 55 to 60. So we're already considerably above the average. Again, there's nothing that says it has to go back down. But if you just look at how it has behaved, that's a strong indicator of where silver is likely to trade relative to gold. So the odds are that the ratio will come back down at least to say 55 to 60. That's a reasonable target. And then again, in a speculative mania, I don't see why it wouldn't go back down to 15.
Keith Neumeyer was famous on our show for saying 9 to 1 silver gold ratio, because that's the mine ratio of the number of ounces of silver to the number of ounces to gold. That's his thesis. Can you back that thesis up, or do you disagree?
I would absolutely agree, because if you look at that ratio, it's also an indicator. I'm not saying that it would go there, but it's indicative of where silver can go, because if you take, say, $1,900 gold, and you use that ratio of sort of 9 to 1, you're in the $300 range again for silver, and that's again one of the reasons I have that target.
Well, if you use a 9 to 1 gold silver ratio, or silver to gold ratio, right, you wouldn't need gold to go to $5,000 for silver to reach 300. I'm doing the math here. What is that? You only need gold to go up 2-3x for
exactly. Say $3,000 gold,
yeah,
at roughly, for easy math, 10 to 1, that's $300 silver.